Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, we are honored to have once again Ray McGinnis. Ray McGinnis is the author of Unanswered Questions: What the September 11 Families Asked and the 9/11 Commission Ignored. McGinnis believes the stories of the families of the victims of September 11 and their efforts to establish an inquiry into the attacks offer a doorway for theological reflection about what it means to live in a post 9/11 world. Senor McGinnis, welcome to Politics Done Right once again. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Great to speak with you again.
Well, great. So let me ask this question because as we were talking, I said I was just talking to your publicist. It was, are there some great updates that we're going to have that we haven't heard about what occurred with 9/11 Saudi Arabia and why it is that we haven't done much about anything with regards to the people who actually affected this?
Yeah. So these families, of course, were the ones who, if it hadn't been for them, the co-chairs of the 9/11 Commission, Tom Keene and Lee Hamilton, said if it hadn't been for these families, we wouldn't be here. There wouldn't have been a 9/11 Commission. So after all these years now, there are families, not all of them, but many families involved. They want to have a day in court with the government of Saudi Arabia and various officials connected to a number of the hijackers. And you would think that the United States government, the Department of Justice, and so on, would be saying, families, be our guests. Go ahead and take this foreign nation where 15 of 19 hijackers came on 9/11. Be our guest and go ahead and take them to court. And instead, you have a situation where, Donald Trump's Attorney General William Barr was saying, he and the National Director of National Security Intelligence, Richard Grenell, brought sealed documents just a couple of years ago, saying no, Saudi connections to the 9/11 plot would imperil national security, and we cannot have any kind of even the justification for that secrecy needs to be kept secret. And the families are saying of recent years, how can our taking Saudi Arabia to court or various officials in Saudi Arabia and having a day in court, to see, of course, in the court system, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. But how could that exercise in and of itself imperil American national security? So, and right up until this summer, we still have slow walking, stonewalling, obstruction, putting the families off from the government. So it's bewildering to the families.
This is over 20 years now, since 9/11. And are you to tell me that, first of all, you're still in touch with many of these families?
With a number of the families, yes.
Right. Now, and you're telling me that they are still seeking some sort of a recompense from not necessarily our government, but the government of Saudi Arabia. And as it turns out that our own government is stopping that from coming to fruition?
Yes. In the summer of 2023. So if I try and go for a walk in the family members' shoes, they're just baffled at this resistance on the part of the Department of Justice.
And this is irrespective of administration.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I want to add that in addition to the matter of Saudi Arabia, you have the matter of the United Arab Emirates, where there were several hijackers as well, and the decision making of the former counterterrorism chief Richard Clarke and his close relationship with United Arab Emirate royals. And he, on several occasions, he tipped off the royals to let Osama bin Laden know that the CIA was trying to apprehend him in both There was one plan in February of 1999 and another one in March of 1999, both in relationship to charges that bin Laden was responsible for the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. And this is a matter of public record, but the families want to know, well, why would you make that call as a counterterrorism czar when your job is to keep the nation safe? And for the families, they're saying, well, what would have happened if Richard Clarke hadn't intervened to prevent that plausibly successful apprehension of bin Laden in the spring of 1999? Maybe in 2001, he would have been, defending himself in a court of law against charges of bombing embassies in the east coast of Africa and not being involved in no time to plan the attacks of September 11th. So, so for the families, it's just, there's an awful lot of odd decision making by people in key positions.
Now, do we have any recent? Well, let me put it this way: do we have the families? Because we don't hear this on mainstream media at all. With whether any families are trying to seek, still after 20 years, trying to seek some sort of a recompense from the Saudis or the Emirates or other places where these hijackers came from. Nobody, in effect, talks about it anymore. Is it that they don't get any coverage? What is the issue?
Well, I have been able to find a few places where it's discussed, but they're not like the it's not being reported on CNN. And I want to say as well that even over in the United Kingdom, there's a family. Jeff Campbell died in the North Tower. He's from London, England, and his family over there was trying to get satisfaction to open up, have a new inquest, a new autopsy, a new inquiry into his death. And the judge in London, England said, no, you can't look at this again. We're not discussing this. So it's definitely the families run into things in the United States, but even in other countries. So it's bewildering for the families to run into this resistance in the United States and in the UK.
No, what's your opinion as far as what's going on?
Well, the 9/11 Commission, their report that came out in the summer of 2004 was largely kind of the talking points for what the report would find. Were written in March of 2003 by the executive director, Philip Zelikow, and another person, Ernst May, basically describing what the report would conclude. And it seemed that the families who were surprised that you would kind of pre-script what you were going to find, don't you want to just go and ask questions and then write your report later on instead of deciding ahead of time what your story is? And so there was a sense.
Wait. Hold on a second. Let me see if I understand what you just said. You're trying to tell me that when we had the panel that gave the final report on what occurred on September 11th, that they had a pre-written script as to what the cause, the scenario that actually occurred before they actually had the research complete?
Yes, there was an outline that was written in 2003 in March. Now it wasn't like it was like all the chapter headings and the subheadings and stuff with some notes. And when it was kind of leaked to numbers of the 80 staff of the 9/11 Commission and to the families in I think the spring of 2004, and they, I remember talking to Bob McIlvaine, whose son Bobby Jr. died, and Bob McIlvaine, this is shocking that you would have kind of a crib notes for what your report is going to find, and the outline and the chapter headings and the subheadings are a mirror image of what the report chapter headings and subheadings are. So it makes families wonder, well, there was concern that some of what was going on with the 9/11 Commission itself was that a report would come out that would not embarrass the president or his reelection chances, which for some families, they said that just shouldn't be an emphasis at all.
Now, how would people from around the other side of the world affect the president chances? I guess I'm trying to figure out why is it that they were so concerned? It seems to me like it has to be more sinister than that. I mean, why would the president be concerned about these are foreign terrorists who did this job? Unless why would they be concerned?
Well, I want to clarify when I'm talking about in terms of the president being embarrassed. It has to do with that the report that would be issued by the 9/11 commissioners in July of 2004, that report would not have anything in it that would embarrass the president to hamper his reelection chances in 2004 in November.
Maybe it's something like they didn't do their due diligence with all the evidence that comes out that says planes may be used to attack the building, that sort of a thing. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, so maybe they would say that there were decisions by key people. I mean, the story that we were just blindsided and we couldn't have known doesn't make sense in the face of 14 other nations that gave warnings that people are making decisions on the one hand saying, George Tenet saying, the CIA director saying my hair is on fire, Richard Clarke saying something really big is going to happen. And then nobody thinks that maybe the CIA and the FBI and the INS need to sit down together and talk about what do we do if we think something really big is going to happen. So it's around decision making, and I mean, there are questions families have around. I mean, on the one hand, when it's clear that there is an attack, the Secret Service uses its correct protocol, which is to take the Vice President Dick Cheney away right away. No questions asked. We're taking you out of your office and off you go to the bunker. And meanwhile, George W. Bush is sitting for 20 minutes, half an hour in front of a class reading a story about a pet goat, and nobody thinks that the president might be in danger if this is a surprise attack. So there's lots of questions around these kinds of things that the families still have that just were never explained.
Now, how many families are still still trying to get some answers now? Because we were talking about during this event, probably over 2,000 families that were impacted by 9/11.
Yeah, there's just short of 3,000 individuals who died. So then you have tens of thousands of people who are variously mothers, fathers,
impacted.
Sisters, brothers, nieces, nephews, so on, grandparents, grandchildren, and so on. So, I mean, there are certainly many families who, after years after the report came out, have decided to go off to, have a private life. But there are still, I think, a couple thousand families still involved in this particular lawsuit regarding Saudi Arabia. And I think for some of the families, it's simply a matter, we want the Saudis to take, responsibility for what happened. For other families, they're hoping that maybe a Saudi official defending themselves would call some witness connected to the U.S. government that might point to dereliction of duty. I mean, that's what Kristen Breitweiser, whose husband Ron died in the South Tower, that's what she talks about. But I think the families that want to have a lawsuit are careful not to blame, not to prejudge what a trial would find. And I think that that's a good call because they don't want to be seen as going on a witch hunt.
So there's an active lawsuit that is in effect right now and I guess that is one of the reasons that you wanted to go ahead and come out again and point out much of what you got from many of the families that you've interviewed.
Yeah, there still is this attempt. Of course, At this point, they're not seeing a day in court. There's not a trial date. There's still legal wrangling and difficulties, impediments being put in their way. So
how can you help them to go ahead and help the process, if you will?
Well, I guess I can. I mean, insofar as I here in Vancouver, Canada, can help, I can let people know that this is still something that's going on, and even if you're much of the media is not covering this story, it's it's important, and people could reach out to Voices of September 11th or other family groups that are involved in this. I think if people do, like, even a Google search on 9/11 families lawsuit against Saudi Arabia, and you did that today on your computer, you could find some links to stories in the news, and then see people like Kristen Breitweiser and Brett Eagleson and others who are named, and perhaps a link to a group that you can support.
Well, Ray, what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't? This is the second time on, so I was coming with that question.
Okay. Well, I think we can talk about how the family's efforts was this is about democracy and transparency in government. I think that the story of these families, these families, for most people, if you have a devastating loss in your family, especially something like this, your instinct is going to be to be far away from the spotlight, to not talk to politicians or the media, and to go on and live your private life after you've dealt with the estate and the funeral and so on. But these families, of the ones that had losses, went to Washington, D.C., knocked on the doors of members of Congress, and the Senate, and then after they're finally pressed to get an investigation, then they went and they gave the 9/11 Commission several, over 1,000 questions to ask different individuals and agencies, which the commissioners received by saying, "Thank you, families, these are really good questions." And then the commission proceeded to only answer about 9% with any real seriousness, any deep dive, and left most of the questions without being addressed. But the families monitored the 9/11 Commission, and they tried to keep it on track. And so I think that I think that people, we know who Rosa Parks is, and I think that we should know who Kristen Breitweiser, who lost her husband Ron, Patty Casaza, who lost her husband John, Mindy Kleinberg, who lost her husband Alan, Lori Van Auken, who lost her husband Kenneth, and so on, Mary Fetcher, who lost her son Brad. These people should be studied in high school. This is a stunning introduction to the 21st century, and we need to know their names, and we need to know what they tried to do to keep America safe, and to and I would say as well that the dozen people who were on this family steering committee, representing tens of thousands of families, the majority of them voted Republican. So this was not like a bunch of Democrats that had it out for George W. Bush. So this is about what happens to ordinary citizens when they end up getting caught up in a story like this, and what we can learn about how the media, before the 9/11 Commission report came out, the media was sympathetic to their questions. And then after the report came out, for the most part, there's exceptions like Harper's Magazine, but for the most part, the media circled the wagon, said the report was a great report, and largely went on and ignored the family's questions that were left unanswered. So it's a cautionary tale.
It's a cautionary tale. Ray McGinnis, author of Unanswered Questions, What the September 11th Families Asked, and the 9/11 Commission Ignored. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
A pleasure. Thanks so much.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.